Frolic in brine, goblins be thine.
Uh-oh. We'll be goblins today.
Yeah, speaking of goblins, we got a couple of goblins ourselves. I don't know if you would call yourself a goblin or an orc. I don't know, or a troll. I don't know. Probably no surprise to be a troll, but sometimes. But I'm Mike.
And I'm Thomas. And I've been reading Malazan, Book of the Fallen, so I would be a Jagged. But if you're a if you're a Malazan nerd like me, you'll know. Otherwise, hey, we're not talking about that today. We're talking about Ringu. And before we get to everything, I will say this so that we won't have the nerd in our chat or in our comments saying, "Well, actually, it's Ringo is a misnomer. The movie's never been called Ringu. It was called Ring, and the it was called the English word ring, even in Japan. And when they were bringing it over here, there you don't have a consonant at the end of Japanese words, they added the "oo" at the end. In IMDb they miswrote it as Ringu, and it's that miswriting has followed it through history now, and they put that on when DreamWorks put out their copy of the DVD. They put Ringu on there, so it states. So we know it's really called Ring. We're calling it
Right.
Ringu to
That's
separate
what
it
they're
from
calling
the American version.
it. Right.
That preamble aside, go ahead and take
Yeah.
over, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're in the top 3 minutes here. We're about ready to do our plugging here, and then we'll get into the main event here. I know I've been looking forward to doing this one because I this is one of the rare horror movies that I actually have seen before you, before you told me. But before we get to that point, we got to pay the bills, so to speak. We are the first, the last, the Nerdom. We are home at Central Channel for all those things that have cult followings or whatnot. As I like to say, we are sitting steady at about 455 for our subscribers. Incredible leap from where we were even a few months ago, before the new year, before we got into 2024. So all things good. Your positive vibe is working. I believe that is working very well
Hmm.
for us. I wanted to kind of just get out here that we're also on Twitter. You run our Twitter department or X, whatever the hell that is, but
X.
if you want a good longer form conversation in between our videos, I would recommend pinging Tom on there. I also am on there, although my main account is for a different one, and I try to just keep it for off to the side kind of things that have nothing to do with this show, but occasionally overlap with our love of entertainment and media. But we like last week we did the X-Men. I believe that's sitting steady at about 108 views or something like that.
Yes.
Something pretty healthy for us, very healthy.
Yeah.
Considering that's a fourth of our audience, that's always a good thing. And this week, like Tom was saying, we are dipping a toe in Japanese horror, which we have been here before,
Yep.
with some a little bit different flavors of this. But this is something that when I kind of reverse watched it, probably like most people in America. And what we're talking about here is I'll drop us in here on the Ring, the the Ring Ringu Japanese horror film that we're covering this week. I'm surprised we didn't get to this one a little sooner with overlap, but now's about the right time, I suppose, right?
Yeah, it's one of those that it was on my bucket list for our channel. There's several on my bucket list, but I always push them off further and further down because I want to do them service, the proper service, and I wanted to really dig into it. And one of the things that helped me along was the Arrow Films box set of the movies, and I was kind of I
Go ahead and show
wanted.
that up to the camera again. Yeah,
Yeah,
right
nice,
on.
nice little art there.
That's
It
beautiful.
comes with now you could just get the Ring in 4K, but I went with the Blu-ray set because you get Ringu You get Ringu 2,
Okay. Yeah.
plus the forgotten sequel Spiral, which we'll
Hmm.
talk about a little bit, and Ringu 0, which is a prequel. I was kind of debating on whether or not we should cover more than one of the movies, but I think Ringu is enough to fill out a show, and we would probably just be we would shortchange it if we did it. So we may do like the American versions, and
Hmm.
we might do a little follow up if this video does well, or someone says in the audience that they want more Ringu. But yeah, the I think a lot of people got introduced to the Ring by the American version of the movie, but it was one of those movies that was I was very much aware of and wanted a copy of. Now, back it came out in 1998, and back then, if you think about the internet, internet was still in its infancy. It was getting older, and the tendrils were out there. You could talk to people, and there was not Amazon. There wasn't Amazon Japan or UK to where you could just dial up the internet and get whatever you wanted, either streaming or order it.
Hmm.
Back then, if Amazon was around, it was just selling books. So so you had to be a little more inventive with trying to get things. One of the things you could do was talk to people in chat rooms and maybe cook up a deal with them. And I know back in the day, one of the more memorable ones was I was talking to this German guy, and I got him to get me a CD of this Finnish band a goth Finnish band that I really wanted a CD of, and I won't name the band just to keep me from being embarrassed, but he wanted a horror novel, an American horror novel called God is a Bullet, and we made that. We each bought each other the stuff, and we sent it to each other. And luckily, we both sent it to each other, and so we got our stuff. But you kind of had to have trust in people.
Yep.
And I was in a horror discussion group, and I don't know, and that just happened to be some guy from, I think he was from somewhere in Asia.
Okay.
I don't think it was Japan, but he could get a copy of Ring for me, and I was overjoyed because back then it wasn't 98. I was in St. Louis, so it was in the early 2000s. Probably it was before the American version came out, so it was probably 2000 2001. And the guy said, and we didn't do exchange. He just sent it to me. I forget all the circumstances, but it did come to me, and it wasn't it was a copy. So it very much in the style of this movie, making a copy for someone to see. It was a copy, and it wasn't even a DVD. It wasn't VHS. It was a VCD. Do you remember those? Video CD.
Yes, I do. I remember those. I also remember they're very much a curiosity that was kind of like, what's this thing?
Hmm.
And then you kind of get to play it in your computer and get a secondary few
Hmm.
layers of some maybe artwork or maybe lyrics
Hmm.
and of course the video, obviously. But yeah, hilariously offline compared to today, which is like
Yep.
anything and everything is online, and like
Hmm.
it's even your phone
Hmm.
can has a faster connection in rural Arkansas or rural Missouri than it ever would for like what top speeds that we got back in the day. Like if you were a poor
Hmm.
like me growing up, I'm just kidding. You had AOL CDs out the ass to go find them. But yeah, I have it's funny. That's really cool. That's a really awesome story that you have that background with this movie. I it kind of came at this like most folks. I saw the American version first, and I'll pull that up here while we're talking about it. The 2002 version of it.
Hmm.
Um, I don't remember seeing it like right away, but I do remember seeing it early, like maybe a year or so later. And of course, a
Hmm.
few years later, we enjoyed it. The and We basically went to me and my wife at the time. We saw this one, and then she got really into it and found out the basics of it, like what it was remade on, and then I think we had
Mm-hmm.
to go searching around to find it, but we ended up
Mm-hmm.
watching the Japanese version. And
Yeah.
it's very interesting how they're. Of course, we're not comparing this one to that one. We're just comparing the original to itself.
Mm-hmm.
But for what it is, it is most definitively a horror classic. Just kind of like Parasite would be for Korean
Mm-hmm.
film. That's an instant classic as well, which I very much enjoyed. Very much a different uh, flavor of things
Mm-hmm.
to get. But yeah, this week we're about ready to break into this one here. Pretty
Yep.
well. I think we already broke into it already, but
Yeah.
yeah. So the American film from, and I haven't seen the American film in a long time. This one I rewatched this one obviously to be fresh for the show. And I found that it's from what I remember. I believe that I recall considering the original version, the Japanese version, better than the American one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like after watching, kind of the American one first, and then there's nothing wrong with the American one; it works very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just saying, like, it just tells it tells the story
Mm-hmm.
a completely different way, in a way that matches it really. You're kind of just thrown in the scene or thrown into the movie or whatever it is for American films. I think there's a little bit, of course, that probably comes with a little bit more overlap of our lifestyle, I guess, here. So it's not kind of foreign to us or whatever. But and
Mm-hmm.
not that it's foreign over in Japan and how they live, but the way that they do things is just a little bit different than how we do it. So if you're unfamiliar with any of this, it kind of takes a little bit longer draw to bring you in, but that's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
arc of Ringu. It really layers you in on the
Mm-hmm.
perspective that I just wanted to comment on. It's a slow buildup and of that. Not only that, but the was my notes here. Sorry, I was just looking at I just had my mind on it. Um, oh wait, yeah. Here it is. Not just the buildup, but the way that you get exposed to this urban myth, this urban legend
Mm-hmm.
is is the way that it's built in. At first it starts kind of like as a hearsay, and then it goes very quickly to secondhand, and to from
Mm-hmm.
third hand to second hand to you slowly kind of get to understand. Of course, I always joke, like, some horror movies have like rules, right? It's something you haven't said, but I said a number of
Mm-hmm.
times. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's certain rules that go with the thing. This
Mm-hmm.
movie kind of sort of goes with this. It's debatable. This rule concept is very debatable,
Mm-hmm.
just to being honest. But what I found, it doesn't. When it's a bad horror flick, the rules are like really, they practically tell you what they are. With this, it's much more subtle. Like when it is in the background and it invites you in as a viewer, it just kind of,
Well,
from my perspective, it keeps pulling you in closer and closer and closer to this thing. And it's quite remarkable how it does it. It builds tension, and holy shit, Tom. Like I'm not like one to get jump scares and startles and stuff, but I gotta say, I completely forgot about that aspect of this film.
yeah.
And it masterfully, because it's probably something I'm not used to, it masterfully plays on when they jump and you get the
Mm-hmm.
scare, and when they go boo at you, like, you don't expect it, I think, unless you are really well traveled for the cinema, and maybe you're a little bit more of an in-depth thing. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. If you think back about when it came out in '98, that was at the. If you think about American horror, that was during the thick of those Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer type
Mhm.
movies, which you see the first one,
You've seen them
pretty
all.
pretty entertaining, but yeah, you got the diminishing returns. They were kind of the cynical horror movies that kind of winked at the audience, but then once you got to the third or fourth sequel, it's sort of like, well, you're kind of becoming what you were making fun of. So it was sort of as a horror fan at that time, I was very disinterested in American horror. I was more into foreign horror and old horror movies. That's when I was getting into deep into Dario Argento because
Mm.
At the same time, Anchor Bay was coming out with videotapes and DVDs of these classic horror movies. So I was looking for something more, and I think the audience was too. They wanted something a little bit more visceral, and that's why when Blair Witch came out, it was such a huge success. And
Oh
then when,
man, breath of fresh air,
yeah,
probably.
exactly. And about the time that Blair Witch came out, the Ring came out in Japan, and Japan was in a set. They were going through their all their horror movies were like these gory direct to video type deals, direct to videotape, and this was the first time that they kind of like took a step back. I was like, okay, we'll do a kind of a it's kind of a quiet horror movie for the most part.
Hmm.
It's almost PG-13 because there's nothing that would be too offensive for a child to see. A young teenager at least that can handle horror. This is something that kind of fits into that zone, and it also um, appealed to women as well. Like you said,
Hmm.
your wife at the time was into it. It was
Oh, absolutely.
very
Yeah.
much,
I
yeah.
I did not introduce this to us. She completely found it was outside of me for sure. That I do recall. Because I wasn't really a big horror guy back then anyway. Like
Hmm.
I kind of took it, and I kind of like yeah, like the Scream 1 through like that's probably the most annoying thing for me is of course now that I know that I can draw upon a much deeper, wider well of history of these wonderful films that are horror.
Hmm.
Some kind of are very experimental at their time, like what they do, like the ones that we've covered back and
Hmm.
forth. I think it's a very. I'm going through a very fine finishing school, I should say, a starting and finishing
Yeah.
school of horror to appreciate this, or not even as a critic, but as just as a person
Hmm.
to like figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And this is something that it very slowly draws you. Now, I could see like where some people might not have the pacing down, but you're absolutely right on the money. That this equally appeals to probably a little bit more for women than men, to be
Yeah,
honest. But
yeah, and it
I could see
launched.
that.
Yeah, it launched J horror, or Japanese horror in Japan. It blew up horror. It's the uh, biggest box office for a Japanese horror movie ever.
Right.
There might have been something recently that outdid it, but this sort of and this is actually this is actually this is actually a remake. If you didn't know, it's based off of a book uh,
Yes.
called Ring, and
I'll pull
I
that up
forget.
here in just a minute.
Yeah, and you'll help me with the name of the author. But it was written in 1991, and it's actually a little bit different than the movie in that the main protagonist in it is actually male. They changed it to female in the movie. He's the main character in the book is actually married with a wife and kid, and in the movie she's divorced, and the young child is actually a girl in the book as opposed to it being a boy in the movie. But the book Suzuki, it's actually a series of books. The sequel Spiral.
Koji Suzuki. Yep. Mhm.
Yep. And then the third book's Loop. We won't spend too much time on the books, but the book and the movie is different. Also, in the fact that it does involve a videotape, but it's actually when you watch the videotape, you get a virus from the evil spirit of
Mm.
Sadaka, and it gets transmitted, and you have to get someone else to watch the videotape to
Oh,
pass on the virus and not
right.
not get killed off in a week. And this book is more leans more towards sci-fi. I've always wanted to read the book, but I never got around to it.
Yeah.
And each of the books are like the first book it dealt with the videotape. I think the second one involves reading something like print media, and then I heard that I was watching an interview on my Blu-ray, and the third book kind of goes all Matrix style, and you find out that the evil spirit is actually a virus a computer virus, and it's trying to wake up the world that they're living in a simulation. So,
Okay, interesting. Yeah, well, I don't. That would be very cool to dig into a little bit later because
mhm.
I'm more of a book guy anyway. Like, well, for sci-fi for
Yeah,
sure.
I figured that idea would
That's really cool.
kind of entertain you, and
Yeah,
then
there's actually a few Japanese sci-fi books that I have on my wait list. One is Crest of the Stars or something like that. I still have yet to
mhm,
do that. That was recommended by one of our
mhm,
special friends of the show, Jay, a
uh,
number of years ago, if I'm honest.
yeah,
But there's well, and not to mention that there's a kind of overlap there with sci-fi anime, a manga. Doesn't matter. It's like
mhm,
main arm, mainline it into my veins, please.
yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, yeah. So,
and
kind of
and
since you mentioned the tape, it kind of follows the same rules in the although in the movie, and spoiler warning here, we're about 21 minutes in, so probably after about let's just call it 22 minutes, 23 minutes, like we're gonna be in spoiler territory. So if you don't want to know, we've already kind of gone there anyway. But you the rules are that if you watch this tape, you have 7 days, and at the end of the 7 days, you're gonna get a phone call at some point, like usually initially, and then it's kind of
mhm,
confirmed that, and then you the curse is on you, and then the only way to the rules are kind of wishy. I don't know. It's kind of hard to pin down, but in my viewing opinion, it was you see the movie, and then the only way to do that is to copy the tape and then play it for somebody or have somebody else play it, and then they get it, and then they got to do the
mhm.
same thing. And then if you do that, then you stay alive. But if you don't, then the 7 days you're gonna be visited by this vengeful spirit
Yeah,
of just
yeah, and to
of
touch it.
sadness or horror. It's like I don't know. I got to think about it. I'll let you take over. Sorry.
That's okay. And then to kind of finish my thought on the books. So the books were out there in 1995. They did a TV movie called the Ring. I think Ring Collection, which was based off the first book, and I think it was pretty faithful to the book, but it was from what I heard, has some. Uh, Japanese softcore porn elements to it. There's a little bit more TNA.
Okay.
The ghost is a full-breasted, exposed breast woman.
Right.
so so yeah, I think the author kind of likes that one because I think it because it was more faithful to his book than maybe I don't know maybe enjoyed the other elements as well. But so they they and evidently I guess it was popular enough to where they ended up actually releasing it to the theaters as well. So I guess it was somewhat in the minds of the Japanese public. So when they decided to do another remake of it in '98, that's when Hideo Nakata did his version of it, and he was not a big horror guy. He was kind of doing these movies as a way to kind of launch his career and do he wanted to do documentary about a blacklisted director, Joseph Losry, I think his name is, which I think he ended up doing. But yeah, I think the fact that he's not a traditional horror guy really adds to the movie in the sense that I think anytime someone that's not into horror movies but ends up making a director making a horror movie that does put himself into it. Now, if they just kind of half-ass it,
Mm.
it's going to be obvious. But if they really get into the material and actually do something meaningful, oftentimes they become classics because they come with a fresh perspective and they kind of do their own kind of thing. And the one of the things that I actually absolutely love about this Ring movie is that it's a bit of a procedural. It's kind of a mystery where they're trying to track down what's actually going on here, but it's also very much a family drama in the sense of the main characters and
Mm.
also the backstory for the ghost. It's kind of a mired family situation that you really kind of dig your teeth into. One of the things that I initially really loved about horror when I first got into it, when I was reading Stephen King novels for the first time, it always starts with the classic perfect family
Mm.
getting kind of assaulted by these evil spirits, and this whole idea of a perfect family always kind of bothered me. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I always that well, that's kind of boring, you know. I want to get into the messiness of things, and it seemed more real if you have more of a real family situation, and this movie provides that. I mean, there's a the main character is this divorced woman that's a reporter,
Right.
who often leaves her kid alone for hours.
Right.
I mean, there's there's outside the kids in this movie, there's some bad aspects to everybody in this movie. There's not like a shining light character here. You could throw stones, although you could also defend them as well. I mean, the mother's trying to make the best of her situation, but yeah, maybe she should pull in grandpa a little bit more on helping out with the kid.
Yeah, well, every family has a different dynamic, and it
Yeah,
is
exactly.
some of that could also be cultural too, a little bit. But the aspect, well, at first the movie kind of starts off with these group of kids, s- take it
Hmm.
as that they're younger kiddos, um, and they watch this film, and then a little bit later on, then there's it's in the funeral.
Yeah,
And
it's
it whets
mhm.
your appetite for, like, basically, like, you're kind of shoved into this horror situation, and you're kinda jumbled about the first few steps of it until you can kinda get your bearings and figure, "Oh, shit, well, okay, that's what happened," or,
Yeah.
kinda understand,
Hmm.
like I said, the rules,
Yeah.
for lack of a
Well,
better thing.
it kind of starts off kind
Mhm.
of interesting in that it kind of establishes the rules with these two teenage girls kind of joking around about the urban legend,
Right,
and one
right.
girl uh, pretending seemingly to pretend like she experienced the situation. In reality, she did actually watch this videotape, but it's very reminiscent of the beginning of a Scream, in that it's kind of taking it lightheartedly and kind of winking at the audience, saying, "Yeah, we know, we know horror movies and their rules and
Right.
whatnot. Wink, wink." And then um, they're kind of funny, and then they launch into the horror of it. It ends up being real, and the girl, and I like how it's not a gory movie.
No, not at all.
The horror at the beginning is a freeze frame of her being attacked by the ghost. They wisely saved the money shot, so to speak, of the ghost spirit coming out of the television to the end of the movie, which is very effective, and it's kind of a showstopper. And if you had that early on, that would kind of spoil it. American,
Sadakos.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So American cinema is much more layered into special effects and wowing you with things, and their version Samara is much more flashier. There's much more effects to her, but and I enjoy the American remake, but and I like the fact that there's a sense of repetition. And that's why it's named Ring. It's the cyclical nature of this creature, in that there's like this compulsion to make copies and spread it.
Yeah, it's a terrible, horrible thing that just keeps coming back. Like the
Yeah.
bad luck penny, I suppose, perhaps. But, yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and yeah, and I like how yeah, it's kind of quaint now, but videotapes, that was leading edge technology back then. I liked how the urban legend uh, gets kind of fused with technology with this, and
Mhm.
it's kind of a odd thing for Americans, but cursed objects is kind of a thing for Japan. It's very much a kind of a thing in their zeitgeist. So it's very natural to them, and I like how that's kind of has been introduced into the American psychosphere. But yeah, at the time it was kind of novel kind of idea, and actually by the time I saw it. It was in the early 2000s, and we're on our way to DVD. And I was like, well, this movie is kind of dated already because we're kind of moving away from videotapes anyway. But it's kind of that tail end of that videotape
Yet,
generation.
yet strangely, I believe that boutique ones, we'll call it, like for I believe that I saw a headline saying vinyl for like a number of times. It's not the first, but vinyl has year over year overtaken total sales of CDs. Like, and that's
Yeah, I can
modern
believe
day.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and same thing for videotapes as well. Like there are definitely, and we had a special guest, and I'll put that link in the
Mm-hmm.
show later. On that really cool gentleman that we talked to.
Chris Miles. Yeah.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, awesome, awesome, cool thing to get into. But this continues that this welds the like where Blair Witch was very much kind of dark horse, I guess. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody could have predicted it really. There was like some very unique guerrilla marketing, I suppose, behind the film, word of mouth kind of thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, like how it was kind of set the table for that. This in the first scene from the beginning of this movie, it sets that precedent very well with the urban legends. And I believe my notes. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'll take it at face value. My research, like the premise of a cursed videotape or a cursed object, like you're calling out, is similar to actual legends, similar legends that were circulated in Japan in the 80s and 90s. That would not surprise me. We had grown up a year from going from elementary to middle to high school. Like we all heard our kind of share of urban legends, or
Mm-hmm.
you kind of hear the thing. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're kind of from a distance, but they're always kind of around. And then
Mm-hmm.
we go very quickly from this being like a probability to like the number of times a certain character, you see it per the
Mm-hmm.
days that you have until you're done. But
Yeah.
um, and even down to like when you start to see more of how what the end result is. Like, I don't know if you got in the storyline or not, but like toward the end, kind of the start of the
Mm.
curse was like this psychic, and she was not treated very
Mm-hmm.
well, and she had a very horrific ending. And
Yeah.
I think that while we're kind of progressing, like to not die, how to break the curse, you're following on that trail, like while you're getting even deeper into the thing.
Yeah,
And
that's one of the things that I like. Well, let's talk about the curse thing. I think it's mainly kind of based off of sort of the kind of like the theater, kabuki theater of the idea of a cursed spirit, a female cursed ghost, and she's kind of painted up like one of those kabuki theater kind of things with the bluish white skin and the long hair covering the face. It's very kind of theatrical and kind of clicks back to those things in your mind, but not, but it's offset by it being real, so to speak. But the whole idea that it was kind of a rumor that it may have been based off of an urban legend there, but it's from my research, it indicated that that's false. It's sort of this is sort of kind of grown out of its own self. But and also, but the thing about the rules and whatnot, I like how this movie. A lot of times, those horror movies, those rules become set in stone. But immediately, once they're set into place here, the characters are constantly trying to rebut against these rules and find
right.
loopholes. And there are is like the idea that once you see that videotape, you're supposed to get a call. And when she makes a copy for her ex-husband and had him watch it, he didn't get a call. So they're like,
Love
there's
you,
like those.
honey. Here you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I love about this movie is it's like
Right.
it's like I like because they don't spell everything out in American movie. it would be very clear. They would have a big discussion at one point about their relationship, and you really you just feel it by the tension between them, the whole tension of the whole movie. There's a lot left unsaid, both in all the relationships and also in the mystery of the ghost. We do get a lot of backstory for that, but there's also a lot of mystery still in place, and I think that's key for horror movies, for really good horror movies, is to have that mystery, that idea of what's going on, and then that's for the future sequels to play with that myth and maybe fill it out and maybe ruin it, because I think a lot of
Add other
times,
angles
yeah,
to it as well. Yeah.
yeah. A lot of times when you explain the mystery, a lot of times you kind of dilute it and you lose all of the coolness or creepiness of it. But yeah, and I love the whole. Um, 7 days things. We weren't really into there. The concept of memes weren't there back in the early 2000s, but this movie really, or the American remake of it, really got settled into the psychosphere of I think globally, because everybody had seen this movie. It was a huge success here in the States, the at least the American version,
Yeah.
as it was the
Well,
Japanese version in Japan. And I remember at work at the time, there was I remember a gentleman that we worked with that was very freaked out by this movie, and one of our old we keep bringing back old guests that we've had, Lori, who was back on our Avatar video. She I used to sit next to her, and we would mess with the guy that was freaked out by the movie, and we would raise up out of our cubicles and he was on the other side of the cubicle. We'd go. I forget his name. We'll call him Joe. We'd creep up, and go 7 days, Joe. 7 days. He goes. Stop, man, stop.
that's awesome.
But yeah, it was it's one of those movies, and but yeah, it's forever, and it kind of pains me in a way, because when I was typing J horror classic in the title, it kind of pained me. It's like, okay, yeah, this movie's over 20 years old. Yeah, it is a classic, but it's so fresh. It's so in my mind that I don't want it to be a classic. I want it to be present day. But yeah, has become a classic.
Yeah, they pay attention to details. Every line, every scene, very detailed. They build that up over time. It might run afoul of some modern sensibilities for timing, perhaps, but it still holds together very well.
Yeah, it's very very slow paced, which I enjoy, because you can
I do
kind of
too.
really dip into it. One of the things I love about foreign movies is, and I think the same may be true for the opposite. But seeing foreign movies, it's kind of like our glimpse into that culture, that place and geography. It's kind of fun to see what Japanese life is like, and of course it's movies. And for I'm sure people in Japan watching American movies, they look to that like, okay, this is how Americans live,
Sure, right.
and we
Like
know
cars,
that
like all,
yeah,
yeah, you pay attention to certain things or aspects. I
right,
mean,
right,
maybe aspects of the movie that don't really matter, but you notice them.
absolutely,
Like you. But
yeah.
so I wonder though. I do want to play this for my kids, because it is kind of low level, but it does build
Yeah,
up.
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I want my kids to see this because they don't really have any history with the phone or what the hell's a
Mhm.
squarish TV? What the hell's that? That kind of thing. But it'd just be interesting to see. I think I know of my kiddos like as like a guinea pigs, I suppose. But like I think I kind of know like how they'll react. I think, but it's always fun though to share movies with those that you love, regardless, and like kind of see like what they take from the
Yeah.
film. But
Cuz it's sort
this one,
of yeah, it's sort of like watching it for the first time again with the new audience.
yeah, it's so funny too because
Yeah.
like in the opening, like towards the beginning of the movie, the two teenage girls like they're watching. There's a baseball game on. That's
Mhm.
not unusual at all for Japan. Like as far as I know,
Mhm.
back then they still it was still a very very popular sport back then. I believe it still is.
Mhm.
probably akin with how it is in America, maybe. Probably
Hmm.
a little bit less so. But I only paid attention to that because I've been really wanting to watch some baseball for whatever reason. I just miss it. And I recently turned on a subscription to MLB, the thing, and I've been kind of watching some players that I've wanted to follow. So
Hmm.
it's kind of funny, like that drew me in right away. It was just kind of funny. We just a weird synergy there.
Yeah, yeah, that's but yeah, I like yeah, kind of glimpsing into that world, and yeah, the in the family dynamic is something you can kind of really sink your teeth into, and I think that kind of appeals to a female audience as well. I
Oh
think
yeah, yeah, that's
they
true.
want that kind of a little bit more. You know, guys tend to go for the blood and guts, but you know, I enjoy both. You know, but yeah, this movie really pays off if you really want to kind of dig into deep into personal relationships, because yeah, the whole scene when she's at her ex-husband's apartment and the student comes in, you kind of
Oh
get that sense that there's something more going on between the ex-husband and that student, you know. Maybe not so good things, but maybe there's a little bit more of an intimate relationship between the two. But the whole thing is, a lot of it's just kind of left up to the viewer to kind of
right.
piece together, and the fact that the ex-husband is actually kind of have psychic powers as well kind of comes
Right.
as a kind of a surprise, sort of a midway or more towards the end of the movie. It kind of comes out, and then that's how they really dig into the history of the ghost spirit, and they find out about her mother, and her mother that would sit out on the beach and would watch the sailors and watch the ocean. And one of the things that one of the commentators said on the Blu-ray was, and I didn't notice it, but it makes sense. The whole sea element to it, with the waves and whatnot, is very reminiscent of the VHS statics on the screen with all the static snow that
Hmm.
happens. It's kind of got that kind of vibe of the ocean and the sea, and that's kind of an interesting parallel. And another thing that the guy pointed out was that it's very Lovecraftian. There's
There
the
is
whole
a little.
thing. Yeah, there's the whole thing with the ocean, and you know, there's a lot of.
Hmm.
He wrote quite a few stories about you know, these ocean creatures, and you know, we there's a mystery about the Sadaka, the ghost spirit's father, who he actually was, and was he maybe a sea creature, and that whole rhyme about frolicking in the brine and the
Yeah.
goblins. So there's that idea that maybe, you know, she's a manifestation between that you know, sea creature and her psychic mother. You know, the
Interesting.
yeah, as opposed, you know, there's not really a kind of a devil um, thing in Japan. They're not Christians, so they don't have that that iconography. But this evil demon from the sea with the woman, and then maybe created this evil spirit of the girl.
Hmm.
That's kind of there's so much things you could kind of play with this movie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. From the, even the number thing, there's always a thing, there's some kind of thread to pull on. There's many good ones that
Mhm.
you can pull on for this one for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing with the number, like the number four is bad in Japan because the word death sounds like four.
Hmm.
So as we avoid the number 13 here, the number four is kind of bad. So that's why at the beginning of the movie it's four teenagers that see the videotape, and they stay at their little cabin that they stay out is B4. So they're kind of doubling up on the
I didn't
fours
catch that.
there. But yeah, that's but yeah, and also interesting thing is when this movie released, they it were released with its sequel Spiral. in the theaters at the same time.
Hmm.
Their idea in Japan was, okay, well, if Ring is a hit, and it has done well in the past with the original version. People will be their appetite will be for a sequel, and they'll have that right there. And but the bad thing is the people that made Ring was one crew, and a whole separate crew made the sequel Spiral, and Spiral was more true to the book as opposed to the movie, the first movie. So yeah, people seeing or the Ring wanting more of that didn't get what they wanted with
Hmm.
Spiral, and
A
so
little bit harder
that did very
connective
yeah.
tissue, right?
Yeah, there wasn't a very much connective tissue between the two, and so a year later they got the same crew that did the Ring to make another Ring sequel to the actual Ring. So there's two different sequels
Interesting.
in Japan for this, and then a few years later they did the prequel. The fun thing on the Arrow video is that on the second Blu-ray of the sequel, they had both movies. So they both had Spiral and Ring 2. Now, to be honest, I haven't seen any of the sequels of the Japanese ones, so it'll be fun to kind of watch those in the future. But I did
We
see the American sequel to the Ring 2, and that's actually done by Hideo Nakata. He actually came across to America to make the sequel, which he sort of kind of remade The Ring as well. And they didn't have the rights to make a sequel to the book
Hmm.
Spiral, so it's sort of like a another type of branching
IP.
off from The Ring. Yeah. So, and I really enjoyed that sequel to it. Of course, the American ones are a little bit flashier, more violent, more on that end of things as opposed to more psychological. But there's something to be said for the American versions as well.
Yeah, no, that'd be. You know what? We'll probably have to do a show like where we do a sequel off, like
Mm-hmm.
between the two, and then maybe even follow up in a few weeks and do the American version of this, and maybe compare and contrast, like maybe on a mini segment. We'll see, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and but Shout
actually,
Factory has so
actually,
Shout
excuse me,
yes
actually,
actually Shout Factory has a 4K box set of the American sequels, so I may have to dig
snap
up
it
my
up.
pennies and get that as well.
Couch pennies.
Hmm.
Yeah, this one, I forgot a lot about it, but then like when I got going back into it, it reminded me a lot of like what was going on a little bit. Of course, I had a little bit of a foresight here to dig in a little bit more and pay attention to a few more things than I would have normally done. But the it works very well. I I This is one of the rare things where the American version holds its own, and I think the Japanese version holds its
Yeah, I
own.
think so. I think so.
And I think that's probably very unusual for like,
Hmm.
like went from something overseas to like where okay, like The Office was UK based, where it came
Hmm.
from, it had different sensibilities, somewhat than the American version
Yeah.
is very different, and some people can't get over that, especially if they came in on the you know the the original version. In their mind, that's never going to change of like
Hmm.
what the benchmark is for that particular thing, for
Yeah,
sure.
and oftentimes, yeah, with the with the ring, a lot of times it's the version you saw first that really kind of
Sure.
holds you close as far as that. But yeah, yeah, and to touch upon the American versions of things, yeah, the Japanese horror at the time was huge, and the Americans were snapping these things up. The fact that I couldn't find a copy of the original Ring before the American version came out was because DreamWorks snapped up the rights to Ring and kind of buried the release of any type of American release of that Japanese version, so that everybody would see
The
the American
American
version
version, right?
as first. So
Gotcha.
so yeah, exactly. So but I had my ways.
Short-sighted.
I got a copy of it. But yeah, yeah.
Well,
And there's another thing about watching the VCD of it. Yeah, watching it on the kind of a grainy version of a copy on my computer,
Sure. No,
and
it's true.
enjoying it. And then watching the Blu-ray version on this, it was like one of the things that kept going on in my mind was, oh wow, it looks so good in Blu-ray,
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's true across all fans, all nerds. You tend to remember if it was substantial what was going on, especially if you read it, or if you listen to it, audiobook, or if you watch the video or whatever, or if you watch 15 YouTube videos that talked about the lore around it before you went and got into it. It's probably a more modern way of doing things. I know that's probably not unusual, but it's kind of funny how you're drawn in, and it really is a classic because it kind of
Hmm.
doesn't matter like what time period it was. You
Hmm.
get the right analogs going, and it makes sense. And it would follow through all the way to this day. To
Yeah,
like
yeah, and
seeing
that's.
K
Hmm.
you know, and now what do you see? You see a resurgence of these things of yesteryear where you and I grew up with them, like you had a CRTV, a cathode ray tube, TV, 4 by 3 was the standard. Like, I can remember when I actually saw HD, for the first time, like, on broadcast TV, like, on cable.
Hmm.
It was The Soprano. Like, I'll never forget about it, like, how clear it looked, and
Yeah,
kinda having that kind of shock and awe of how things change. It
yeah,
would
yeah.
be you could see this where, an aspect of this, and I'm sure it's been done, where this concept has been played with, maybe not directly, but indirectly, like where, it's your cell phone or, something. And of course, this ticked all the boxes off too, like the mirror. It had a mirror scene, like they kind of call back to that, remind you of like what land you're in. The other thing too, I don't think we talked about yet was it's still spooky. It's like really, it really screws with you a little bit.
Oh
Like
yeah.
the main character, and I can't remember how this came up, but something about like if your image is taken, like if your picture is taken, like you'll see deformed, in
Hmm.
a very twist. It's just a very macabre way, and that also kind of takes us there with Polaroid, when she
Yeah.
snaps her picture, and you're like waiting
Hmm.
to see like what her face looks like until it's revealed, and you
Hmm.
just it's that whole it does this very well. It does the draw very well, and then
Hmm.
boom, it hits you,
Hmm.
in a few different ways when you get down to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah, the whole idea of yeah, the husband, ex-husband. And it's kind of interesting in the fact that in their relationship, it's gone bad and you kind of wonder why. And then the fact that that it's revealed that he could read people's minds, that's probably what screwed up their relationship was that she seems to be kind of either through him or herself has sort of
Mm,
abilities as well.
right.
And
They kind of flirt with that
so
a little bit
yeah,
around the edges.
yeah, yeah.
It makes
So
you think that maybe they do, maybe they don't, kind of thing.
yeah, so maybe she saw his wandering eye or whatever. And but yeah, it's kind of interesting to kind of speculate on those things. But yeah, another thing about the whole Japanese horror is with this it kind of launched everything, and the future Japanese movies like Dark Water, The Grudge, they there was the American versions, One Missed Call by
Mhm.
Takashi Miike, one of our favorites on the channel. But yeah, so it became like an industry where like the Japanese would make these ghost movies, knowing that the Americans were going to come running with their money. Take my that whole meme with Fry from Futurama. Take my money, please.
Right.
Because the Japanese knew it was a payday, a big payday to make these movies, because Americans would snap them up and make American versions of it. But I'm more of the type to go to the original source, and I love in Dark Water, which is based off another one of that the author of the Rings, his books, and it's actually directed by Hideo Nakata.
Mhm.
So and I've never actually seen that
I mean,
movie.
either.
So
Mm.
I've got the Blu-ray and I want to watch it.
I've
So
seen. Yeah, go ahead.
but yeah, maybe we could follow it up with if this does well, maybe we'll do the Grudge. I haven't
Oh,
actually.
I have seen The
Uh,
Grudge. Have you?
I I've seen the American version.
Korean, I believe.
I haven't seen the original version of Ju-on, the Grudge. But to bring it up, the Grudge.
It.
Another movie that I have not seen is the movie where they take the evil spirit from Ring and the evil spirit from the Grudge, and they have a square off versus. There's in 2016 they came out with that Sadako versus I forget her name, but yeah, it's one of those that I need to see. I think it's on Shutter.
Yeah, there's a lot. Well, we've freaking just hit like six of them all in a row of like where we can go from here. Like well for sure. Like I hope folks out there like this. I know we
Hmm.
did. And you're just getting you're just cutting your teeth on like what things are because other things, and we even talked about like South Korean, you know, similar ones of their, they're certainly out there. They're probably not as popular as the Japanese horror ones, but um, they've been influential for sure. So who knows? Maybe I'm talking on my out of my mouth,
But
but
yeah, I think this movie really inspired a lot of the future horror of the
it did.
genre. You don't watching this movie, a lot of the scares of it aren't as impactful maybe to a newer audience because those people that took what they learned from these movies, this movie kind of expounded upon it in in future movies. So the you know the it, you don't
It's
realize
30 years
how in
old. Yeah,
yeah
it is.
you don't realize how impactful this movie is. Um, but from when it first came out, it was like a revolutionary thing. It was like, oh my gosh, this is the new horror,
Right.
and I think those people that were inspired by it. One of the movies that was directly inspired by it is It Follows, which was a big horror success a few years back. It kind of plays with the whole idea of this thing that you have to pass on so that it doesn't get you. And I've been wanting to do a show on It Follows as well. But I think also it inspired a lot of internet culture and internet horror in the sense that I really think the whole idea of the urban legend and the videotape evidence of these urban legends is directly influenced like creepy pastas, which are creepy pastas like made up internet legends,
Hmm.
urban legends, and then there's a lot of you know videos on YouTube that deal with these videotape urban legends of this is a discovered videotape of these horrors,
Found
and
footage.
yeah found footage. I
Liminal spaces
obviously
too. Yeah.
yeah liminal, yeah, the whole I believe like the Blair Witch and this movie
Mm.
both inspired this whole new wave of these guerrilla, making your own kind of horror, and you really don't need a whole lot. This movie had like $1 million budget, and they really had to do kind of think about what kind of eerie effects they can make, and it kind of reduced itself down to like and another cool thing about the Blu-ray, I'm not being paid by Aerofilm, by the way, but they do like they clip out that 50-minute video that they watch and put it as a extra on the Blu-ray
Oh, that's
so that
cool.
you could actually watch it. And it's really kind of yeah. I could put it on my TV and it's like but
Yeah.
yeah. So watching it, yeah, it's more kind of like an eerie art kind of experimental art kind of thing,
Mm.
and a lot of people kind of do that now on YouTube with their videos. But yeah, it's very creepy and eerie. Throwing a towel over a guy's head, pointing. It, but with that whole effect, and they shot it as I understand, in 35 millimeter and gave it that videotape kind of wash to it to make it look
Hmm.
kind of videotapey. But yeah, the just those simple things can really pull out this guttural horror in yourself. And when she kind of comes walking out of the well at the end, um,
Like full and
they
complete. Right.
yeah, yeah, they had her walk backwards and then play it backwards so she's walking forward. So you had that weird jerky nature
Hmm.
to her body, that unnatural movement, and to much the same effect as in Twin Peaks in the Red Room, if you know what I mean. But
Oh
uh,
yeah.
but yeah, the never discount really cool just basic tricks to really amp up. You don't need CGI for everything. You know,
No.
you can make some very interesting things, and I think the fact that you don't have the money and really have to come up with ideas to really kind of pay off this horror to make it real, because you know if you don't don't be creative and you just put a guy in a rubber suit, it's just a guy in a rubber suit. You really
Right.
have to kind of the whole idea of just having a girl with her hair in front of her face and you don't see her face, that just really off puts you really
It
want to see that face.
they
It just
it's amazing how economical they are for showing the the supernatural kind of freak, ghost, specter, whatever you want to call it, and then
mm-hmm,
how they dole that out over time, and they
mm-hmm.
they really underdo it in some lights, but like it makes you want more. It whets the appetite, I suppose. For me, I don't know about you, but
And now, the one thing I'll ding this movie, although maybe it's just me, maybe you could tell me it's just me, but the now we're at the end, so we'll talk spoilery things, although we have throughout the thing. But when they get to the well to find the corpse of the girl,
right.
um, why did they send the guy down? Because you know, and having the girl pull up those buckets, it's like, doesn't it make more sense to have both of them up there and just drop the buckets down and
I'm not
scoop it
sure.
out, pull it
I'd
out,
have to go
or
back and replay
have
the
her?
yeah, I'd have to go back and replay the dialogue to like get an intuitive thing, but I did not pull that out right away. Like I was kind of
Yeah,
I think it by that part I was already onto the rules and be like, okay, all right, what am I? Like
yeah,
okay. So
yeah,
they find the
or
body so that they're released, right? That's the thing.
yeah,
Oh, by the way,
yeah.
you get a virus because now you're psychic.
Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, I just don't know why they didn't send her down originally, because he's much stronger to pull up those water buckets instead of her. But I guess it made more tension for her pulling those up and becoming exhausted, and the time come creeping down. Maybe they'd been a little bit more timely on on. You got to build that tension. It's like,
Well,
they
this
had a whole week. They've been kind of fucking around the whole week, and
well,
then they
right,
gotta
right.
really amp it up at the last the last day.
Well, they definitely this movie definitely it might annoy modern people maybe a little bit more. It didn't bother me at all. In what that
No,
would
no.
be true whether I saw it for the first time or third or fourth time, but they build the tension very very well. I think,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
if I don't know, like, well, it would be interesting to see, what our opinions are, like, when we go down this road a little bit, a little bit more.
Yeah, and yeah, the whole thing about foreign horror movies, I think one of the things that is true for every culture, every population. The horror and fear are universal.
Yeah, very
So
true.
the things that scare us scare other people as well, and it's interesting to see what culturally is scary to each of the cultures, because it kind of ties into that primal fear. So what one culture finds scary can also be found scary for another culture, but it's so unique and
Mm.
so different that it kind of adds a whole different layer to things. And I enjoy the mixing up of that, and that's why I'm always open towards another country's horror movies, and I seek those out. So when I get bored with American horror, I could always go over there.
Well,
Go.
I, well, just like we are, we take our journey wherever we go, and we follow it as it goes, based on your excellent recommendations and whatnot. That's kind of how things are shaping out, really, in bigger, wider media. We're starting to
Mhm,
see a much more prominent energy and money being given to things that are made over in South Korea, or whether it's
mhm,
K-pop. That's something in the last 10 or 15 years I would have never called ever. And then
mhm.
the soap opera dramas, there's a name for them. But
Yeah.
that is popular. Same for manga and anime, as we've kind of flirted
Mhm.
with these things and interacted with them directly. That's not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's awesome. Like that,
Right.
it makes Hollywood, it puts them on guard and on their toes, so that we don't keep getting the same, I don't know, whatever it is. Like I don't know,
Mhm.
like we both really didn't call it out, but like Frozen Empire, which is like the latest Ghostbuster thing, is out.
Mhm.
I don't care. I
Right.
don't
Right. Well.
I'm not into it. Like I don't really give a shit. Like I don't care. It is whatever. But
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
rather watch this or like a series of this though. That's for sure.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that was I'm glad people are waking up now to what I learned back then is that the when American stuff no longer speaks to you, there's other things that you could get into, like back then in the 90s there was a lot of big blockbusters that were
Mm,
just big explosions, and they're fun for what they were, but I wanted something else. I
right.
was tired of those things. I wanted something unique, so I would dig around and try to find these things. And my ways were like reading magazines like Fangoria that talked about Ring, and I was like obsessed with this movie. I had to see this movie. And other magazines that I'd find in the back pages where they were selling bootleg DVDs
Sure.
or
Yeah.
VHSs of these obscure movies. And that was part of the fun, was just the adventure of finding it. Now, last year I watched a Japanese zombie TV series that was very entertaining on Netflix, and all I had to do was turn my TV on and find it on Netflix. So it kind of removes the fun of discovery of tracking these things down. But for the newer audience that may be watching us, we were the front soldiers at the time, kind of demanding this stuff, and you're reaping the rewards today of of us, pulling that stuff over and celebrating it and making it a part of our culture as well.
Yeah, you have to constantly innovate, and I'm all for mixing of things, like, where there's just so many things, and it's also true with American food. 10, 15 years ago, it would have been Applebee's, and now, nowadays, like, and we're talking in the suburbs. Now
Hmm.
there's, like, at least 3 good Thai places, like Chinese, like, there's other, like, Mediterranean food, like, there's just you just never know,
Hmm.
like, what's gonna become the next big thing.
Yeah.
And even not even the next big blockbuster, but big enough to have a following of people that will pay money to see it. Like, I think that we are
Hmm.
I think some of our, entertainment is on track for that, and they understand it very well. But then you
Hmm.
you kinda see, like, these kind of attempts, like, Madame Web, earlier this year, like, where people are like, "Nope." That nobody, even the stars weren't even pretending that it was, like, anything but, a minor, money printing machine, which it was not. But, like, it just
Yeah.
but that's the refreshing part, is, like, there is constant attention, whether it's us kind of pulling something back from the past, or finding something new. We do that. Tell us what you think. Would you like the American version or this version better?
Hmm.
That's fun. What do you think? What about the novel? I'm sure there's nerds out there. that could fill us in on what they like, what they don't like. But I
Actually,
yeah, right, right.
but yeah, the yeah the fact that there are these things out there, and also the one thing fun things about horror is that all you need is a really cool idea. You don't need stars, you don't need big special
Very
effects.
true.
All
Page
you
move
need
forward.
is
Yep.
a really cool idea. And one of the things that we found a couple years back that's being made into a movie is the Backrooms, that little short film that they
That's true.
did, a teenage kid did on his channel, his YouTube channel. It blew up, got millions of views, and is becoming a movie. Skinamarink as
Oh,
well
nice.
was like a short film on YouTube that became a real movie. Yeah, all you need is a cool idea, and the audience will find you. And that's one of the very cool things about horror is you. There's not a whole lot of fluff. There's if you try to advertise it to death, a lot of times that doesn't work. That word of mouth, that oh, did you hear about it? It's almost like an urban legend. The cool horror movies is there's that cool urban legend. Did you hear about that movie that's coming out that's about this and this? You know, it's that you can't discount word of mouth even for today, and for really good horror movies, and yeah, they'll spread like viruses. And this movie is that it kind of just it is what it is, and it
Right.
is that
It
proliferation of the curse, the proliferation of this horror. It just really symbolizes horror in general. It's just
it
a kind of a beautiful thing.
it or the American one, I would argue, probably more this one. But it is a perfect movie that if you're just not quite sure what you want to watch and you haven't seen it, or maybe you've seen aspects of it, to put on a weeknight, maybe before you go to bed, or Friday, Saturday night as well. That's
Hmm.
fun times, like when you put it on and turn out all the lights and kind of
Hmm.
just fall asleep to it
Yeah.
or something. But it holds its own. It had a lot of fun. I was happy to see you recommend this one for this week.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I don't have too much more to share aside from go check it out. Like this is like this is a very strong recommendation from both me and Tom. Probably more
Yep.
so from Tom than me, but you're not going to be disappointed. It holds up. Well, that's the one thing I guess we didn't really talk about was like how well it holds up. I guess we talked around it, but it still
Hmm.
holds up very well today.
Yep.
It fits right in with meme culture that we have today. It's just in a slightly different intake,
Yeah,
but
and
it
that's
works very well.
it's only an hour and a half long.
Yeah,
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 it's an
yeah, yeah,
hour and
yeah.
35 minutes. So yeah, it's in and out. Yeah, the movie, I put it on and I kept thinking, well, there was a snack I wanted to get, and I was like, well, I'll wait. I'll watch another 10 minutes and pause it to get my stuff. And I was done with the movie before I ever got my snack. So because I just couldn't let the movie go. I had to
Yep.
finish it. But yeah, it's a deservedly a classic. It brought Japanese horror to American audience, and yeah, it's we're all the better for it.
Indeed, indeed. Well, I think that's we're rolling up on the caboose here. Turn
Hmm.
our thing back on. If you've been with us this long, we thank you very much. Again, as always, if you want to see more of our content, we welcome you to go check out our back catalog. Uh, and remember, unless you subscribe, then if you subscribe, you're going to get a front row seat to all of our content. And also to mention, I'll pull it up here, make us go big here to talk about a little bit more shilling for your latest. You finished the Book of the Fallen, and you're well on your way to the secondary layer of it with
Hmm.
some other aspects. But that was just like just the other day, and like going strong. And of course, our last week's X Men, they cloned
Yep.
Tyrone a few weeks ago. All that, but you're only going to see it if you show up on YouTube and check out our channel. We would love to interact with you. Have a conversation with Tom on Twitter if you're there. Um, I'm not too far away from rolling out our website. It's probably going to be a little bit closer to May than this month. As I think, what is April 1st is Monday? Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
yeah,
Watch out for those pranksters.
yeah. Watch out for those jokesters. But I would say, oh, let me turn this off and then I'll bring us up front and center, and then we can do a proper walkout here. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So go check out Ringu or Ring, 1998, or the American version too. Like I have a feeling that we're going to be visiting this one again very
Yep.
shortly here. If for no other reason than just it's just a good. It's awesome to find a series of movies or a series of properties that you can get into. But maybe you're not a movie guy or gal, whatever. Go
Mm-hmm.
check out the book. I know I will like, especially the sci-fi aspects, because it might have
Mm-hmm.
some overlap with some other things that I've been into. Well, I don't know. Lately, I've been into sci-fi short stories for whatever reason. I've got
Mm-hmm.
a really great Arthur C. Clarke one that I want to make a video on. Maybe we'll see. And I still
Yeah.
have to review the Dune 2 art book that I got that kind of
Mm-hmm.
sets the stage for that. I've got it. I've just been enjoying it on the offside, like a little small, little nice thing to kind of rotate out, shut the computer down, or just do this and then kind of turn to actual physical media. Um, Always fun.
Yeah.
Uh,
So,
but I've been Mike.
and I'm Thomas, and we'll see you in the internet waves.
You better copy that tape, and you better not get that call. You better not. You better answer it.
Yep. No, don't make plans for next week because it's 7 days, Joe. 7 days.